As a researcher, I ask a lot of questions, and sometimes when I notice something, I get stuck there. Today I'm going to share some numbers with you that I'm particularly stuck on. In Canada, men are 4 times more likely to die of suicide than women. And last year, in BC, where I'm from, almost 80% of all deaths by overdose were men. That's 1,795 deaths. And on average, in incarceration rates, 85% of provincial and 93% of federal admissions are men. Something is not adding up. And these trends, they're not new. They're sustained patterns that only become more alarming when factors like age, occupation, and minority status intersect and increase risk. So you can see why I had to ask, what is going on? And how do we better support men farther up the line before worst case? So I set out to investigate this in 2 parts. First, I interviewed community agencies in BC to find out which services already exist for men. Do they exist? My first finding was that not only are the services and the funding for them sparse, but we actually lack the infrastructure to support men in the way that we support women and children, which we absolutely need to do, but we are missing a huge piece of the puzzle here. A second finding was that stigma, or the fear of being judged specifically as a man asking for help, still stops many men from accessing support they need. So what do we do with this? How do we show up for men in the way that fits for them? Well, in the second part of my study, I will be asking men in BC who have access support, what's working, what's not, and how do we do better? Because we need to do better. Specifically, we need to start hearing the voices of men who are typically not heard in research. And if this sounds personal, it absolutely is. You see, I'm not just a researcher. I'm a daughter, a sister, a wife, an auntie, and a friend. And those statistics are not just numbers. They are people who are falling through the cracks. We know suffering is not always visible, and it can feel impossible to ask for help. So I invite you to join me, to be curious, and to keep asking, how do we better support the men in our communities? Thank you.